Welcome to the deep dive, where we take a bunch of sources and really dig in.
Yeah, get to the bottom of things.
Exactly. And today, it's something probably sitting in your kitchen right now, that head of garlic. The one that starts sending up those little green shoots way too soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Happens all the time. You buy it thinking it's, just food.
And suddenly, it's got ambitions. It wants to be a plant. So why does it do that? And more importantly, what can you actually do with those green gits? Are they useful?
Well, that's exactly what our sources get into today. We're sort of following along with Aunt Green and these two young students, Kesser and Steen.
Okay.
They're looking at this exact problem, the sprouting garlic, and asking, the basic questions. Why? Can we eat this stuff? How do we grow it better? And they even stumble into another kitchen headache, those little black flies.
Ugh, fungus gnats, right? Okay, so we're basically tracking Kesser and Steen as they help Aunt Green figure out this garlic situation.
Yeah, what to do with the sprouts, how to get something useful from them inside.
Planning for a proper harvest in her garden, storing it right.
And maybe, just maybe, finding a clever way to keep those flies away using what they learn.
It's kind of cool how much is packed into one little bulb, isn't it? And hey, if you want to keep following Kesser and Steen on their future projects and discoveries, definitely hit subscribe to the deep dive.
Absolutely. Their hands-on approach makes it all very relatable.
Okay, let's dive in then. Garlic comes home, it sprouts like crazy. Your first thought might be, oh no, it's bad. But the sources say something else is going on.
Yeah, the crucial thing to remember, and what the sources really emphasize, is that garlic isn't just sitting there. It's a living bulb. It has this built-in biological drive to grow. It's basically stored energy waiting.
So it's not rotting or anything. It's actually trying to do something. It's plant job.
Exactly that.
Mm.
And the reason your store-bought garlic often kicks off so fast in the kitchen, it's usually the change in surroundings.
How so?
Well, it might have been stored cool professionally, maybe, or just during shipping. Then you bring it into your warm, bright kitchen.
Ah, and it thinks springtime. Let's go.
Precisely. It's like a false signal. Warmth and light trigger that natural urge to send up shoots toward the sun and push roots down.
Makes sense.
And Kesser and Steen saw this really clearly. The sources mentioned they just put a few cloves in a glass of water.
Yeah.
And pretty quickly, little roots started appearing at the bottom. It's a very visual way to see that drive to grow.
That's a great little experiment. Okay, so you've got these determined green shoots. Now the big question, can you eat them?
Yes, definitely. Kesser and Steen wondered too, and the sources confirm it. Those green tops are perfectly edible. People call them garlic sprouts or sometimes green sprinkles.
Green sprinkles, I kind of like that. So how do
Yeah.
they taste? Are they super garlicky like the clove?
No, much milder. The sources describe the flavor as, well, fresh, lightly garlicky.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe like a mix between chives and just a hint of garlic. Not that strong bite.
Okay, so more like a fresh herb addition?
Yeah, exactly. Think like chopped chives or the green parts of spring onions. You can toss them in scrambled eggs, stir them into soup right at the end, or just sprinkle them over a sandwich or potato.
Nice. Adds a little freshness.
And Kesser and Steen apparently took this idea a bit further. The sources say if you take those sprouting cloves out of the water
Yeah.
and plant them in a little pot with some soil, keep it damp, put it somewhere bright,
Like a windowsill.
perfect. The plant keeps growing, the green shoots get stronger, more substantial, and you get a continuous supply of these green sprinkles to snip off and use.
Huh. That's a neat trick. So you turn this like accidental sprout into a little countertop herb plant.
Pretty much. It's a great way Kesser and Steen could see, the potential packed inside that one clove. Just keeps giving.
Cool. Okay, let's shift gears from the windowsill to the garden patch. Aunt Green wants to grow her own proper harvest. But the timing for planting garlic outside is a bit weird, isn't it?
It is a bit counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Most veggies go in during spring.
Right.
But for garlic, if you want those nice big heads, the sources are clear. The best time to plant the cloves is actually in the fall.
In the fall, before winter. Why?
This is one of those really interesting things about garlic's life cycle that the sources explain. Planting in fall lets the cloves put down roots while the soil's still a bit warm.
Okay.
Then comes winter. And that cold period, it's not just something the garlic endures, it's essential. The cold exposure is what triggers the clove you planted to divide itself into multiple segments. The individual cloves that make up a full head of garlic.
Whoa, wait. So the cold makes it therm cloves. If it didn't get cold, it wouldn't become a head.
That's basically it, yeah. Without that cold vernalization period, you might just get one big, round, sort of undifferentiated bulb, not the segmented head you expect. It's a crucial step.
That's fascinating. Okay, so if Aunt Green's planting this fall, what's the method? What do the sources say?
Pretty straightforward, according to the sources. You want to pick your biggest, healthiest cloves, ideally from garlic that grew well locally, if you can get it.
Makes sense. It's already adapted.
Right. Plant a pointy end up, about 5 or 6 centimeters deep. The sources also recommend mulching, maybe with compost after planting. Helps protect them over winter, adds nutrients.
And spacing.
Give them some room. About 10 centimeters apart is good, lets the bulbs develop properly.
Soil type. Does that matter much?
Oh, definitely. The sources stress loose and well-drained soil. This is really important going into winter. If the soil gets waterlogged and stays wet, the cloves can just rot.
Right. Need to avoid that. Okay, so planted in fall, they get their cold treatment over winter. When does Aunt Green get to actually harvest this garlic?
Harvest time is typically the next summer, usually midsummer, around July or maybe early August, depending on the climate. The sign to look for, the source says, is when the lower leaves start turning yellow and the tops begin to kind of wither and flop over.
Okay, tops falling down means bulbs are ready. And then what? Just pull them up?
Pull them up carefully, yeah. But then comes a really critical step the sources highlight: drying or curing.
Curing? Why is that so important?
You absolutely have to cure them properly if you want them to store well. If there's moisture left in them, even a little, they'll get moldy or start to rot pretty quickly.
Ah, okay. How do you cure them?
The sources recommend finding a dry, shady spot with good air circulation, like under a porch roof, maybe in a shed with the window open, or even laid out on some kind of screen or net so air can get all around them. Keep them out of direct sun.
Let them air dry thoroughly. Got it. And once they're totally dry,
then they're ready for storage. You could do the classic thing and braid the dried tops together into strings. Or if you've trimmed the tops and roots off, just put them in a mesh bag, a basket, or even a paper bag.
What about plastic?
Absolutely not. That's a big no-no from the sources. Plastic traps moisture, and that's a recipe for mold. Keep it airy.
Good tip. So if Aunt Green does all this fall planting, good harvest, proper curing, how long will her garlic keep?
If she cures and stores it right, that homegrown garlic should easily last her through the winter and well into the next year. And the bonus, mentioned in the sources, is she can then pick out her best bulbs from that harvest to replant the next fall. So she's creating her own sustainable cycle with garlic suited to her garden.
That's really satisfying, that cycle. Okay, let's jump back inside the house now. Kesser and Steen and Aunt Green, too, probably deal with another common issue. The sources bring up those annoying little black flies you see buzzing around houseplants.
Yes. Fungus gnats, or surge meg as one source calls them. Very common indoors, especially if the conditions are, well, favorable for them.
And what makes conditions favorable for these little guys?
Mostly, it's about moisture in the soil. The sources explain they love damp soil, particularly if it's got lots of organic stuff in it, and especially if the top layer doesn't really dry out between waterings.
Okay, so damp soil is key.
It is, because the adult flies lay their eggs right there in that moist topsoil. Then the tiny larvae hatch, and they feed on stuff in the soil, fungi, algae, bits of decaying plant matter.
And roots.
And sometimes, yeah, unfortunately, they'll nibble on delicate plant roots, too.
So the damp soil is their breeding ground, and the larvae do the damage.
That's the gist of it. Now, interestingly, the sources bring garlic back into this picture. But from a different angle. Apparently, garlic isn't usually their top target.
Oh, why not?
Well, that strong garlic smell, the sulfur compounds, it seems to be quite off-putting to a lot of small critters, including the adult fungus gnats.
So the smell we like is a repellent for them.
For the adults looking for a place to lay eggs, yes. The sources note you rarely see gnats actively swarming around just to cut a garlic itself.
Okay, but what about the larvae already in the soil? Are they put off by garlic roots?
They're a bit less fussy, the larvae. They can feed on various roots if needed. But the sources suggest they really prefer softer, maybe sweeter roots. Think like lettuce seedlings or young basil, things like that.
Ah.
Garlic roots are generally described as firmer, tougher, maybe less appealing. Plus, garlic in a pot is maybe less prone to staying constantly waterlogged than some other plants, meaning less decaying stuff for larvae anyway.
So if you have a gnat problem overall, the garlic pot probably isn't the main source, and its roots might be relatively safe.
That seems to be the implication from the sources. In fact, having a pot of sprouting garlic nearby might even offer a tiny bit of deterrence with its smell, keeping some adults away from neighboring plants. Combining that with letting the soil surface dry out more, maybe adding a layer of sand or grit on top, like the sources suggest to block the adults, that helps a lot.
It sounds like Kesser and Steen might have seen these gnats buzzing around something else first, maybe like a pot of basil. The sources mention basil as a classic culprit because it likes that warm, damp soil.
Very possible. And that kind of situation, according to the sources, leads Kesser and Steen to investigate a natural remedy for these flies, using cold mugwort tea.
Mugwort tea. Okay, that's unexpected. What's the deal with mugwort?
Mugwort, the sources name it transplant, has these quite bitter and aromatic compounds. They specifically mention things like absinthe and cineol. These chemicals are known repellents for various small insects and soil pests.
Interesting. So how did Kesser and Steen use it?
They make a cold infusion, basically, a cold tea. Soak the mugwort leaves or tops in cold water, then use that water for the plants.
Watering with mugwort tea?
Yeah. The sources explain that this disrupts the gnat larvae living in that top layer of soil. Makes the environment unpleasant for them.
Okay, but wait. If you're watering herbs you plan to eat, like basil, with mugwort tea,
Yeah.
does it make the herbs taste weird? Bitter?
That's a really important question, and the sources address it. They say no, it doesn't significantly change the taste. Plant roots are pretty selective about what they absorb.
Right.
They're mainly pulling up water and essential nutrients, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. They don't really absorb complex, bitter compounds or oils from something like mugwort in quantities that would affect the flavor of the leaves. The main effect is in the soil, targeting the larva.
Okay, that's good to know. No mugwort-flavored pesto then. So how do you actually make this stuff?
Simple recipe from the sources. Take a handful of fresh mugwort leaves or the leafy tops, steep them in cold water for, say, 12 to 24 hours.
Yeah.
Then strain out the plant bits.
And just water the plants with that liquid?
Yep. The sources suggest doing it about once a week for maybe 2 or 3 weeks. That should help break the gnat life cycle.
Yeah.
And like we mentioned, they also suggest combining it with covering the soil surface sand, small pebbles to stop new eggs being laid.
That sounds like a really practical, earth-friendly approach. Very Kesser and Steen. And it actually sets up another little test the sources mentioned they could try.
Yeah, a neat little experiment. They could take some of those fresh sprouting garlic cloves.
From Aunt Green's kitchen, maybe?
Exactly. And plant them directly into pots where they knew there had been a fungus gnat problem before.
I see. Like a direct challenge to the larva. What would that show?
Well, it's a way to see if the garlic holds its own. If the garlic grows well in that soil, puts down roots, looks healthy, it suggests either the larvae really don't like garlic roots, or maybe the garlic's presence somehow makes the soil less hospitable for them. Or maybe the larvae just finished their cycle, but it's still informative.
And if the garlic struggles or looks damaged?
Then that tells you the larvae are still active, and the garlic alone isn't enough to deter them. You definitely need the mugwort tea or other measures then. It's a quick check, though, because garlic sprouts so fast.
True. You'd get results pretty quickly. And this whole thread, from using the sprouts to maybe using the garlic plant as a deterrent, it leads to a nice thought.
Right. Could Aunt Green's simple sprouting garlic become her own little protection plant in the kitchen, helping keep pests away from her other herbs just by being there?
That's a great question. The sources kind of leave us pondering. The idea that this everyday thing has these hidden talents, it's been quite the journey, hasn't it? Starting with that slightly annoying sprouting clove.
Yeah, and following it through understanding why it sprouts, how to eat the greens, how to grow it properly outside, store it.
And then even tackling pests naturally with things like mugwort tea, all sparked by Kesser and Steen's curiosity in the sources.
It really does make you look at that humble garlic bulb a bit differently. Shows the surprising life and potential just waiting inside common things in our kitchens and gardens.
Always ready to grow, maybe even protect if you give it a chance. A really lovely thought to end on. And remember, you can follow Kesser and Steen's next explorations by subscribing to The Deep Dive.